President Trump is set to announce his Supreme Court pick on Monday night. The president, who prides himself on building suspense, teased the grand reveal last night.
As you know, there's now a vacancy on the Supreme Court. And if you turn in Monday at 9 o'clock, I think you're going to be extremely happy.
A source close to the president tells Politico that the president wants to maximize television exposure, warning his associates against any leaks because, quote, he wants to be the person who discloses the pick. But that hasn't stopped the speculation, of course. Numerous outlets, including NBC News, have reported that the three most serious contenders are federal appeals court judges Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Raymond Kethledge. The most contentious part of the confirmation hearing is likely to revolve around the issue of abortion, an issue the court will almost certainly face in the near future. A number of abortion-related cases are working their way through lower courts right now. And according to NBC News, no nominee has said outright what their position is, but, quote, their use of coded language will send a signal on where they stand. Experts tell NBC that both Kavanaugh and Barrett have sent those signals to conservative activists who want to overturn Roe v. Wade. For more, I'm joined by Heidi Presbella, who wrote that article for NBC News, and Aaron Blake, senior political writer for The Washington Post. Yeah, Heidi, it's interesting. I mean, like the most extreme example of this in these hearings, I think it was David Souter in 1990 claimed he'd never thought about abortion in his life and ended up getting on the Supreme Court. So they can be cagey about these things. But you're saying two of these potential picks have used code language on this that activists recognize. That seems particularly significant given that Susan Collins is now saying she's not automatically a yes for Trump's pick here. Who are the two nominees potential nominees you're talking about, and what is the code language?
Right. So Roe will be the threshold issue because Susan Collins has said as such. At the same time, as you point out, many nominees have been cagey about it, really dating back to Robert Bork when his nomination was torpedoed by civil rights and women's rights groups. Since then, consultants have trained these nominees not to answer the question. But what we found was that there is a good way to read some of this language that actually lines up with the same language that activist groups for pro-life organizations use, like the Susan B. Anthony Foundation, National Right to Life Foundation. And what I found was that two out of the three, Kavanaugh and Barrett, have used those code words. There are only a handful of them. One of them is referring to Roe as abortion on demand. Steve, we already have a number of restrictions in states on abortion past 20 weeks. And so if you're calling our current laws on abortion on demand, then essentially what you're referring to is taking away some of those exceptions for the life of the mother. The second one, and that's been used by both Kavanaugh and Barrett, the second one is when you refer to someone as a strict constitutionalist. That is almost always, I'm told by impartial constitutional observers, a reference to Roe v. Wade, that you're not supportive of Roe v. Wade because there's nothing specific in the Constitution, in the Fourth Amendment, on privacy related specifically to abortion. Brett Kavanaugh has said very specifically that the Constitution should be read explicitly, that, quote unquote, the text matters. That is viewed by many in the pro-choice community as a code word as well.
And so are the pro-choice folks saying that they see no signals either way from Kethledge, then, the third name we're talking about here?
Kethledge is, interestingly, not on the record on a lot of these things, and we scrubbed the records. He has not given, as far as we can tell, a speech, for example, like Barrett did on the 40th anniversary of Roe, where she made a number of these references to abortion on demand and talked about the fact that the states really have no role anymore, kind of disparaging, talking about that in a disparaging tone. We didn't really see that from Kethledge, and I think that's why he's considered by some members to be the safer choice. He doesn't have the same record as either Kavanaugh or Barrett.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, look, if Republicans, if McCain is sidelined, Republicans are sitting on 50 votes, and Susan Collins is saying Roe is fundamental to her choice here. Based on what you hear from Heidi there, is that potentially advantage Kethledge?
Well, it could possibly be the case. I think Kethledge is the one that would certainly mitigate the Roe v. Wade attacks during the confirmation hearings. At the same time, we are talking about code language here. These nominees are going to be coached on the ways that they should answer these questions during the confirmation hearings. We talk about somebody like Susan Collins saying that she won't vote for somebody who is hostile to Roe v. Wade. Well, she has voted for people, as Heidi has reported, who have used some of these code words and have weighed in to some degree on Roe v. Wade, like John Roberts and like Neil Gorsuch. So I think that unless there is a moment in these confirmation hearings that makes clear these nominees are going to vote against Roe v. Wade, if you're Susan Collins as the Republican senator, are you going to be the one who's going to vote against Republicans getting a 5-4 majority on the Supreme Court? I think that's a really difficult vote, even if we're talking about a moderate from Maine.
And is there any indication, just the politicking that we're seeing, whether it's Democrats, we certainly saw Democrats at least early on a couple days ago going after Barrett. Different conservative groups have different favorites here. They've been sort of putting the word out about who they. Is there any indication that it has swayed the White House, that it swayed the president at all in his deliberations?
It's hard to say, because I think that there was at first a little bit of a conservative backlash against Judge Kavanaugh, who has authored some Obamacare decisions that conservatives have issues with. Interesting part of this is Senator Rand Paul has apparently expressed some reservations about Kavanaugh. If he were to actually follow through and vote against him, that would imperil the nomination in a way that would go beyond just Susan Collins. Amy Coney Barrett is the favorite of social conservatives, but she's also gotten some pushback because of her lack of a record on the bench. They say that there's not enough of a track record to trust what she would do if she got on the Supreme Court. I think if you're Raymond Kethledge, you're looking at what's happened with these two other nominees, and you're probably liking the fact that you're the guy who's kind of sitting back and hasn't really seen fit to irritate anybody through this whole process. Maybe he's the guy that the president will go with, knowing that it's not going to be the one who's going to irritate either portion of his base, either the establishment or the social conservatives.
All right. Well, again, we're probably about 3 days away from knowing who the nominee will be. And then.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.